you go. I don't need to yell that again, but it is 6 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order, our joint meeting between the select board, the advisory board, and the school committee. I assume everyone has quorums.
Yep, I will call the school committee meeting to order.
Okay.
Call the advisory board meeting to order.
All right, great. Select board, we have not a full agenda, but we have a few other things after this, but we are going to start with a public comment and then jump into the Dunstable Regional School District Operational Audit Review. We have some minutes to approve, a few appointments for a few of the positions, the Emergency Management Director, LRTA representative, and the Commission on Accessibility liquor license request, discussion on the fall special town meeting and the warrant, and that's it. We'll open it up to public comment. Is anyone here to speak on anything that is not on this agenda tonight? Okay, we will move on. We will jump into the operational audit review. I believe that we have a PowerPoint presentation that's being presented by the school.
Yes, so first of all, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for meeting with us. We felt like it would be a good opportunity now that the operational audit has been completed to fully go through it, have the opportunity to ask questions and have them answered, to talk about, next steps going forward. So Dr. Bruno does have a presentation that kind of provides an overview of the audit. There's 3 sections to it. We did meet with Groton last night, and the way that we did it there was we kind of went through section by section, and in between opened it up for questions. So if everyone's amenable to that, we can do it the same way, but if you would prefer to do it all questions at the end, that's fine too.
Just to take note that I believe what these boards, the select board and advisory board, have been in receipt of this. I assume everyone's read it. This is the first time that we've discussed it together as a group. No decisions on this have been made at all. This is purely just discussion on what the audit says. So just keep that in mind as you may see some things in there that you may like or not like. No decisions have been made or are going to be made this evening on this.
Correct, and I'll just follow that up by saying that we are planning on having a virtual forum next week. So there will be a Zoom link available, so if anybody does have questions that don't get fully addressed tonight, there will be another opportunity virtually to log on and continue the discussion next week at 8, right? 8. But as you said, there's absolutely no, decisions have been made. This is sort of a result of long-standing conversations of just wanting the school district to have an independent third party kind of come in and assess our operations and then make recommendations purely as to cost savings with no, this is just that. It really doesn't offer advice on what is the most educationally sound practice. It's purely just, these are some ways in which you could achieve some cost savings. These are some ways in which you could be more efficient, some of which are, things that we would want to look at and pursue perhaps, and others are not. So with that, turn it over to Dr. Bruno.
Right, and I just wanted to add, this is now the 3rd time we've walked through these slides. So and it's really just to summarize what is a very dense document, particularly the second part on special education, student services, and student support. So this is the 3rd time we've gone through it. It's also been shared publicly as well. First on the 27th, which is the date on the title slide here, which is when we first went over the summary and presented it publicly at a school committee meeting on the 27th. And as Lacey mentioned, we went through the same slides last night with Groton Select Board and FinCom. So I'm going to have Sherry's going to walk us through the first couple sections, and then I'll hop in for sections 2 and 3.
Thank you everybody for having us tonight. So just to refresh everybody's memory, why did we do this operational audit? And during the FY25 budget season, the town of Groton gifted us $619,000 with the stipulation, with two stipulations. One, anything that we were supporting with that money were supposed to be one-time purchases, so no reoccurring expenses on those. And the second was that we would have an independent operational audit to vet potential cost savings. The Abrahams Group was the consultant who was chosen to perform the audit. They're the same consultant who was used in the 2017 audit that we had. And that did result in the school district implementing some cost-saving measures, such as the central office, central office moving to the Stoddard building, and outsourcing food service and custodial services. The expected outcome, given the fact that certain expenses that the school district have grow at a rate higher than revenue rate grows, the elimination of positions over the last fiscal years, the goal of the operational audit was to explore various options and reduce costs, review current staff and support, and explore potential long-term efficiencies. So as Lacey said before, there were three specific areas that we focused on. One was administrator staffing, student services and support staffing, and building usage. So with administrative staffing, the purpose of doing this was that the district had heard at many open meetings that there were some that felt that we were administrative heavy, that our salaries were too high and whatnot. So we put this as one of the items for the auditor to, the consultant to look at and give an unbiased opinion. The methodology was that the consultant received a list of all the central office staff with available job descriptions, and then they followed up with phone interviews, or they were actually Zoom interviews with myself, human resources, the former assistant superintendent, and the principal of the middle school, he asked us each a different set of questions. And then he was provided a comparison of salaries that we've had in our reports before of our comparison to our market basket and ourselves. And I also provided him with a data point that my organization, MASBO, maintains. So it's a Google sheet from every municipality and school district, and there's tabs in there for every administrator salary. So whoever participates in that can go, and that was provided to them. And then the consultant also used information that he found on DESI. So Appendix A, there's two appendixes in here. A was a salary comparison by enrollment. So that was the factor, the data point that the consultant used to try to compare us to other districts. So he looked at districts that had similar enrollment and EQV, equalized value. So the districts that he chose are different than our market basket. They're Mansfield, Mendon, Upton, Swampscott, Wilmington, Gardner, and actually there should be Triton up there as well. So the rationale behind that was that he was looking to see that if he picked a different subset of who he thought was a comparable district, he would come up, he was going to see, does that jive with what we've been saying with our market basket? So that was that.
Sherry,
Yeah,
can I just so I understand, the market basket is the comparison based on SAT scores, right? Is that how that came up with it? No?
no, our market basket is a set of 10 school districts that the school committee 10 years ago, maybe, less than 10 years ago, picked, and that's who we compare ourselves to when we're looking at with comparable test scores and things like that. But back when, it's my understanding, I wasn't here then, but it's my understanding that there was, they decided on going with like value and enrollment at the time, so that would probably be a little different now too. But it is, I wish I could tell you the 10 things.
No, my understanding was that they picked the market basket schools because it was based on what their SAT scores were in comparison to ours.
So there's actually a whole list of factors that I think was one of them as well as MCAS scores, but it was also like median home value, enrollment, I think median income, like there was a whole list of, I think, 10 different factors. And so based on that, roughly 10 years ago, the school committee selected these 10 communities to be our market basket. And so oftentimes over the years, like you'll see and hear us talk about like, this is how we stack up to our market basket. So I think the thinking was here, the auditor wanted to pick different communities to kind of determine whether what we were seeing with data points comparing us to our market basket would hold up with other similarly sized districts, which also had the similar EQB as well.
So based upon the results of an independent auditor picking independent schools, is that something you're going to consider to modify your market basket since an independent third party has determined that the market basket we're evaluating ourselves to is different than what the actual market is actually showing?
So the way that I kind of interpreted that was not necessarily that he was saying this is your exact match or these are always the schools that you should always compare yourselves to. But these are other similarly sized districts that do have a similar EQB. So it is taking those two data points. It doesn't really factor in some of the other ones. That being said, it was 10 years ago that was created, right? So I do think it would be time to kind of refresh that list. I don't know in doing that if we would come up with these particular communities, because I do think that there are some differences that you could kind of look at and say, well, we don't really match up with Gardner, for example, for some reason, certain reasons. But I do think that it is time to do that.
But if it's time to, are we going to modify the market basket, or is it still going to be a comparison towards the same 10 schools?
No, that's what I'm saying, is that I think we will do that. But for the purposes of this report, like this is what the auditor, these are the schools that the auditor chose to compare us to. And so all of the comparisons that you'll see and the data points that you'll see is like GD compared to these other districts. So it's just kind of giving you a sense of like, how do we stack up with our administrator staffing? How do we stack up with our administrator headcount?
I mean, they're not just random schools, they're schools that could be potential market baskets, good, and they
Yeah.
fit a list of criteria that make sense to compare.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
like those two data points are very relevant. But I think in the past, like the previous school committee that came up with this used additional data points to like hone it even further. So, if we were just to look at those two data points of like EQB and enrollment, yes, we could use these schools and that would be a very comparable, an accurate comparison. But if we wanted to kind of dive in and use other data points, we may come up with some additional ones as well.
A bigger basket.
But these communities were used basically to check, right?
Yeah.
To make sure that what the school district has been presenting is more or less accurate. So they kind of pulled out other similar school districts to basically be the check to what the school district's been talking about.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So in looking at the the comparison of those communities that they chose. The superintendent's salary ranked 4th out of 6. The assistant superintendent at the time ranked 2nd out of 6. The director of business and finance ranked 3rd out of 6. Human resources, 3rd out of 6. Director of student services, 2nd out of 6. Technology, director of technology, 4th out of 6. And the athletic director ranked 3rd out of 6. And there was a note on the report that the salary comparisons do not take into consideration years of service. So there may be someone who's been doing it for 1 year versus someone who's been doing it 20. But this was purely on the salary that was being paid. The consultant also included municipal finance data, including the EQB on that Appendix A. It's on the bottom. This was to provide a sense that each community's financial status has an additional data marker for comparing the chosen communities. Appendix B of that report chose not only just to look at salaries, but the number of administrators that were in the central office. Although sometimes it can be difficult to match some of the positions one-to-one because they have different requirements or in their job description at each individual school. These were selected, the communities were selected compared to us. And it illustrates the number of administrative positions in connection with district net school spending, per pupil expenditure, and school leadership per pupil. So if you look at Appendix B, it outlines, it'll have each community with the titles of the administrators, how much they spend per pupil, of administrative costs, how much of the budget does that represent? Again, just to see how closely they align. The conclusions were that the percentage spending on administrative costs is not significantly different from other similarly-sized districts. The central office staffing included superintendents, directors, and principals across similar districts. The per pupil expenditures are similar with the exception of one outlier, which was Triton. They were a lot higher. And the staffing configurations were similar and appear reasonable. He additionally went on to look at what he called middle management, which is the rest of the central office positions. The coordinators, the team chairs, a math supervisor, the assistant business director, the whole technology department, the community ed coordinator, and student services support. Job descriptions were provided for each of those positions, and the consultant states that they accurately reflect job responsibilities. However, some were job descriptions and some were actual just job postings. So, and there is a difference between the two. So the recommendation is that the central, that's kind of like the same. I don't know why I put that in this.
Because it's so important.
I think you can go to the next one. So in reviewing the middle management positions, also a lot of those positions have different number of work days during the year. Some are 180, which is a school year. Some are 200, which goes a little bit before or after. Some are 210, some are 216, and some are 261 a full year. So what they recommended, number one, is that we update all of our job descriptions so that they're actual job descriptions. And actually, there's a new law that just came in that you have to put the salary range on there too. So it's something that we would have had to do. But also to evaluate the number of days that are on these contracted positions to see if there's any efficiencies, like if they're currently 220 days a year. Is it possible to go to days and reduce the contract? So those are things during this budget season we will be reviewing and taking on that recommendation.
Yeah, and I would just add that some of the findings that cut across both sections is around this issue of reviewing and then revising and updating job descriptions. That's already underway. So, I mean, there are some of the findings and recommendations that are in here that we're doing and that we're already doing. I just wanted to note that.
Do you want questions now or should we wait till the end?
That's what I was gonna ask.
Yeah, so that's what I was saying at the beginning. We can do it either way, but that is the way we did it last night. And that way it's sort of section by section. But if you prefer to hold them until the end, that's fine. So whatever your preference is.
I think it makes sense to address the questions with each section.
Okay.
Now.
Yeah.
So when I read when I read the report, one of the things that was mentioned that was not mentioned there was that you had shared a job description with them for all of those positions, but it said that there was only a partial set of documentation shared with the auditors. Why was that?
Partial documentation.
This is a partial set of documentation.
It probably meant that we probably didn't have a job description or posting.
So you have
Nothing was withheld.
So you have people in positions and they don't have a job description?
That could be.
Other recommendations, at least that you're talking about here, are those implemented in the budget discussion we'll talk about later, I guess? Have we already taken that into consideration for that next fiscal year budget?
Absolutely.
Ask the question.
Can I just want to respond to Matt real quick and then.
Oh, yes.
So just on your point, Matt, like I think that was sort of the recommendation was to ensure that that is done, right? So like, I mean, notwithstanding like what's already happened, yeah, I mean, that was sort of one of the purposes of doing this was to find areas where we could improve, become more efficient. And so that was something that was pointed out as needing to be done and is currently in the process of that.
One of the things in there that I read that I thought was very telling was that they mentioned the whole middle management resources and how a lot of the middle management positions are focused more on more administrative functions as opposed to, different functions. And before I even go on, I just want to say I understand it must be awful to read an audit of what you guys are doing, and I know that's not easy. And I appreciate you guys having these public forums to basically listen to us. And I know that your job's very hard, and I don't want you to think I'm questioning that. But to me, there was a lot of really good information in this report. And when the presentations that I saw, I did not hear that I heard explanations as to why things are the way they are. But I felt like I didn't hear explanations as to they're making recommendations for, efficiencies and savings. But I wasn't getting that information from you guys. And I guess that's kind of what I'm focused on more than anything is that, yeah, we need to look at job descriptions, but it looked like they were also questioning the roles that some people had and that some of the positions could be realigned to better.
Right, no, exactly. No, I think that's sort of what Sherry was saying, is in doing that work of like evaluating job descriptions, we're also like making sure to look at how many days is this person working? Is it possible for them to complete their job in a fewer number of days and to kind of revise some of those contracts, or when there's vacancies to kind of completely kind of revamp that job description and, hire at a lower rate. Like, so I think that really was the main takeaway. So it's talking about the job descriptions, but that kind of does translate to the potential for some cost savings as well.
And just to agree with what Matt said, it is an odd notation that they put in there that some of the information was not provided. So I understand you give them everything, but it's kind of weird for them to highlight the fact that they did not have all the information at the point of time of the audit, being given how critical and obviously how, how much both communities wanted to see what the audit looked like. To have that notation added to that was I was sort of disappointing to say that something may have been held from their audit or review of what was going on.
Yeah, and I think it was not that it was withheld, but that it was incomplete.
Yeah.
Or didn't exist.
I just wish they didn't.
Or didn't exist. So I can't give them something that we don't have. And
Other questions? Oh, Erica, you have one.
Yep, so one, just a quick comment and then a question. is I was one of the ones who mentioned the third-party audit during the overall meetings. What I was requesting was a financial audit, which is not what this is. That was my comment. The second is what's more concerning, besides that they don't have a level of, use of service as part of the salary, they don't mention benefits, they don't mention retirement contributions, none of that, which can vary greatly from district to district. So to me, the data that they provided makes really not helpful.
I totally disagree. I feel like the audit was done very well. There was a lot of financial disclosures that were listed in there.
Benefits, retirement contributions, not listed anywhere.
I mean, part of that would have to do with the teacher's contract being, you have to do a whole different audit for that kind of thing. But there was a lot of financial recommendations in here, when you read through it.
But if the data's not complete, how can you make a financial recommendation?
Well, they made some recommendations based on what the information that was provided to them. So, there's a lot of financial information in there.
We have a financial audit, an independent financial audit every year. That's available if you would like me to send it to you, but it's not secret.
As far as policies and classifications and all of that goes along.
A financial audit, like an annual audit, with its 100%. By law, we have to do that, so.
Any other questions or comments on this section before we move on to the student services?
So just to transition into student services, and again, this ties into some of the recommendations around job descriptions and functions. This is really as far as the operational audit is concerned, the longest section and kind of the most meaty in terms of the very positions and services and how we support the needs of kids. And then also the most opportunity for potential savings, efficiencies, and frankly, better strengthening how we support our students overall. So we looked at multiple years of data posted on the consultants looked at multiple years of data posted on the Mass DESIG website to look at a profile of Groton Dunstable, also comparing other districts and then also statewide trends. Looked at job descriptions, program descriptions, staff licensure, caseloads and schedules, special education referrals and eligibility and IEP services. Some of the findings and the trends that were outlined, looking at roughly 2022 to 2025, the numbers and percentages of students that are eligible for special education services has increased in Groton, Dunstable, and in Mass. So in Groton, Dunstable, from around kind of 15% of students being eligible are on IEPs to between 18 and 19% in 2025. Full and partial inclusion percentages are higher in Groton, Dunstable. Our graduation rate is higher for students that are on ed plans, which was a nice thing to see as part of this. Reading and math MCAS performance and meeting state targets across grade levels warrants attention, and this is when you look at how our students who are receiving special education services or on IEPs, how they perform on the MCAS, for example, versus students who are not receiving those services. All right. So again, job descriptions are needed across all positions district-wide. We're working hard on making sure that they're all reviewed and updated. Role clarity, alignment, responsibilities, and efficiencies. I wanted to just pick out as part of that specifically our team chairs. So special education team chairs vary. Their job responsibilities and what they do can vary across districts. In some districts, like ours, Groton Dunstable, our team chairs are considered administrators, and that means they chair IEP meetings and function as team chairs of special education. They are also building level administrators and part of that building leadership team alongside principals and assistant principals. They supervise and evaluate staff. And so in Groton Dunstable, and you saw some of this a little bit in the findings and in the report, they have a wider array of responsibilities than team chairs in a district where they're actually considered part of Unit A and on a teacher contract. So I just wanted to mention that, and I will say there are lots of benefits and strengths to having your team chairs be administrators as opposed to members of Unit A and being part of that building leadership team.
Just one question. How many, if you're able to answer this, how many employees didn't have a job description? Just sort of, do you have a rough ballpark number? Was it like 10 employees of the district in general didn't have a job description, that they were understanding what their responsibilities were day to day? Ballpark?
Small, I would be a small number. It's not a large number. And I think it's more about making sure that those job descriptions are complete, that they're current, that they're up to date and in line with what we need our employees to be doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So this is one area that was of concern, particularly the cost involved. So when a child is referred for special education, going through that evaluation process, hiring our school psychologists, and in some cases even contracted services to make sure all of these evaluations are complete, and then there's an eligibility determination. It's a very involved process, as it should be. Roughly a third of the referrals are preschool age children. The number of referrals overall has been increasing, which obviously tracks with a greater number of students who are found eligible and on IEPs. One of the troubling parts of this is that the percentage of students or families that go through the evaluation process and their student is found not to be eligible, that percentage has kind of typically been around 30% somewhere in there, which is not a bad benchmark. Last couple of years, that's inched up, and the last year it was closer to 50%. So going through that whole evaluation process for a student not found eligible is concerning, and as part of the findings, mention that communication with parents, making sure they understand when to refer or why to refer. Sometimes it can come from a teacher, so a lot of times it's a parent referral. Anyway, understanding that process and then also strengthening our in-class supports for kids who may be struggling academically are key to address that data. So that's really the next bullet, is strengthening our student support teams, how we meet and support kids when they are struggling. And then what are we doing in our classrooms as part of our DCAP district curriculum accommodation plan, which has recently been revised and updated. What are our interventions with students in the classroom with our classroom teachers when kids are struggling? So that tiered system of support, strengthening that's really has been a big theme of ours in our professional development in all buildings and with all staff. But that's key. That was a key part of the findings in this report. And then looking at speech and language therapy and occupational therapy, our service delivery. So with some of our specialists, an over-reliance on one-to-one meeting with kids, and are there ways or are there more appropriate times that are even better ultimately for kids to be working in small groups with an occupational therapist or a speech and language therapist, those kind of things. So looking at how can we be more efficient and effective in providing services that our students need.
Is something happening at the elementary school level where the need for that in the middle school is so high?
I'm sorry?
Am I reading it wrong when I say that the number of kids that are on IEPs, there's 40% of kids that are on IEPs need speech and language services, which is significantly higher in this district than it is in others? And what is the correlation with it? Is there some kind of correlation with that?
Well, I think there's a couple of things there that she was alluding to is to really look at how we're scheduling those services, and then also, weaning students off as they progress. And so there could be some cases where students are still receiving services for specific needs, and it may not be necessary.
So is that part of the 504 problem that was mentioned in the audit as well, where it kind of mentioned that the team chairs, this is my interpretation, okay? And if it's wrong, you can correct it. My understanding was that the 504 should be more focused on assistant principals and the guidance counselors should be managing those rather than having the team chairs manage it so that they can focus more on the IEPs themselves. Is that something that will help address that, or am I not understanding that correctly?
It could potentially, but that was definitely looking at the team chair's overall job descriptions and responsibilities as being too broad, and that particularly with students who are on 504s, that having guidance or an assistant principal manage that process is more typical.
It also mentioned that the high school block scheduling is a deterrent for the IEP students. So is that?
There's a challenge, yeah.
Okay. And the fact that not only that, but the fact that the teachers at the high school level get 2 prep periods per day rather than the normal 1. Is that my understanding?
Yep.
But that's in their contract, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So some of the scheduling, as we talked about, how are we scheduling and allocating caseloads amongst our special education staff? One of the commendations, and this is part of opening the new Florence Roach building. We were able to put all of our substantially separate special education classrooms at the elementary level under one roof and at one building. And so there are some efficiencies there, transportation-wise and also staffing-wise, but then also meeting the needs, specific, very complicated needs of some of our students, and having our staff, who are educating our kids under one roof. There's a lot of benefits to that as well. So in terms of meeting the needs of kids and then also operating efficiently, having that makes a big difference. And then also being able to have therapeutic programming in district as opposed to having to send kids out of district, which is extraordinarily expensive. So being able to do that and has been something that will continue to save us money essentially, and also serve our kids better because they're able to be educated in the same buildings as our community and our other students. So this offering that specialized programming and demonstrating a cohesive and comprehensive service delivery model for all of our students will help make sure that we're operating more efficiently, effectively, and do what's best for kids.
Quick question. Who does the eligibility? Is that within the school or is it an outside? Who determines whether a referral or a student is eligible?
Well, that is the IEP team
Within the-
with the team, yeah,
There's not like a state outside
correct.
group that does that.
Yes. Yeah, so that's team chairs and, headed by our Jill Green, who couldn't be here this evening. She's the director of special services, student services.
You referenced it, just sort of like weaning process off of the IEPs. Is that still a situation with the state where each person has to do that, including the parents? Is that what you're seeing, is that maybe the parents aren't turning their key per se to have somebody come off of an IEP, or is that where are you seeing the trouble in being able to wean off? At least it seemed like you were insinuating that it's challenging to wean them off of it. Is there one particular group that's slowing that process?
No, I don't think so. I just think sometimes, you receive a certain amount of services and having to talk to families or even the IEP team about pulling that back can be difficult. Yeah, I think that's a universal
But
thing.
isn't the general consensus though, if like the kid got the services that they need, so they are now at level, but you take it away and they're gonna fall back again?
That's, well, I mean, that's the fear, right?
Yeah.
That's the fear, and that, again, every child is different, every evolution of their skills and how they develop can be different, particularly when you're dealing with specific learning disabilities. So there's a lot of cases where, you know, their services will continue and need to, right? So it's, you know, that's not, each case is independent. That being said, you're also trying to develop more independent skills, you know, for all your students. Students who are on IEPs and those who are not. That's a universal goal of education, or at least in my humble opinion.
Take question, yeah?
Behind you.
I will actually just add as well, if you're not aware of the process, students that are on IEPs are reevaluated every 3 years. So if at that point they are meeting their goals, they're likely to continue receiving services. One thing that I have 2 questions. One thing that I noted in the report is that I didn't realize we have only one physical therapist in the entire district. Is that correct? And one of the things that they recommended was that we hire actually additional physical therapists because, or physical therapy assistants.
Yeah.
Because we are contracting out for needing to bring in additional people for that in order to fill the need.
That was also an estimate, that was also a savings opportunity as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, because if we're having to bring people in, not.
correct.
Okay.
Right, and in some cases, you know, some of those highly specialized positions, it's hard to find people. Number one, so that the services are there and need to be provided. So that's where sometimes contracted services come into play. But that was definitely a recommendation. And again, from this operational audit, it's really this section 2 where there's the most opportunity in terms of savings with personnel and FTE, which again, our staff, the people who we hire and work for us is roughly 80% of the overall budget.
The second question, when we were talking about maybe parents, I wasn't clear on the term referral, is that's the same as evaluation?
Referral for evaluation.
Referral for evaluation, okay. So if we're concerned that maybe too many parents are asking for evaluations for kids that aren't actually meeting that need, is there someone exploring and asking the question of why so many parents feel their kids need additional help and that those kids' needs are not being met?
Yes.
If they're not, you know, if they're meeting a benchmark in a test, but they're struggling in school enough to the point that the parents think something's wrong and needs to be addressed, like
Yes.
there's a disconnect there, right?
Well, right, and that's communication. That's some of the professional development that we're talking about in terms of what are some of the interventions that you can do and, you know, immediately, right? Because you're not waiting for, okay, let's see if this child has a learning disability. You're just like, all right, my child is struggling in English class, right? And so here are some things that we can do and try with the teacher and in the classroom to
Right. And like, are there ways that we can be
intervene.
more proactive?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, I think, just to kind of follow up on what Bruno said, I think that this particular recommendation provides an opportunity for potential cost savings, right? If you are avoiding maybe unnecessary evaluations, but it also has really more important benefit of providing intervention and providing assistance to students sooner. It may end up being that student still does require an IEP, but in a lot of cases it doesn't, and maybe they just need some temporary intervention. They get that assistance, they get back on track, and then they carry on and they don't need anything further at that time, right? So I think it kind of serves 2 purposes, which, you know, is one thing that I think is really positive coming out of the audit. Erica?
So it's kind of along the same lines, is you mentioned that the amount that are going through these evaluations that take quite a bit of time has risen to, I believe, 50% that are being deemed ineligible.
Right.
So what, if you have it, what would be the dollar estimate that is actually costing the district? And two, what are the other districts doing in order to keep that percentage down?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I were to speculate on the second part of your question, what are other districts doing, I think again, it's revolves around some of the recommendations we're talking about now in terms of, probably better communication with parents, digging in and talking more about classroom interventions before we get to a referral for a special ed evaluation. In terms of the dollar amount, I don't have that. The average cost of an evaluation, but I can find that.
Jen?
Can you just clarify, what we're talking about with the periods of the high school? So each teacher gets 2 blocks for planning purposes at the high school, is that what's correct?
I believe so, yes.
I think they just get 1, they teach 3 and have 1,
The audit said that they get 2 per the contract.
Was it special education
No.
specifically?
No.
So
It
my
said,
question is that.
it says by getting the 2, it adversely affects the ability for IEP students, when it comes to classes.
But I guess where my thought process is going here, I mean, these block periods in high school are 88 minutes long?
The long,
So these teachers are getting 2 88-minute periods, call it 3 hours a day for planning, where if you're an elementary or middle school teacher, that same teacher is only getting a 40 or 45-minute planning period because they don't have this block schedule the way it is in the high school.
It could, it may be though, that like when the audit is saying 2 periods, they're talking about 1 block period, which is 2, like roughly 45 minutes.
So it's an 88-minute, not
That's my
2
understanding.
88-minute sessions.
yeah, no.
Holy moly, it's like,
The,
they're teaching 2 periods, they got the other 2 periods a day are on planning.
yeah, the challenge with the block schedule, specifically for students who are on IEPs, there's less flexibility in terms of being able to balance students into classes that you don't have as many ways to kind of schedule kids together in groups that would be a little more efficient.
I'm not even saying, to tie this into the IEPs or special ed, I'm just thinking,
Yeah,
how are we have efficient, are we using these teachers and, educators over there efficiently if they're on 3 hours a day of planning when,
no, it's not 3
teacher
hours.
Swallow Union is, has 1 period, which is probably 40 minutes of planning time, so.
Yeah,
I mean, I know my children are struggling, and we're hoping to get classes back, and I'm like, can we take this one teacher that's on 3 hours of planning and throw in another class? And that's, I'm sure I could probably go in and ask the teacher tomorrow, I'm like, how many, do you teach 2 classes, and are you on 2 classes of planning?
I have the audit up, it does say that only special education teacher documents were reviewed. It noted that almost all special education teachers had 2 preparation periods for them. It was specific to special ed.
So like the math teachers and the English teachers, we don't think are getting 3 hours a day.
It doesn't look like they were reviewed.
no.
I just have one comment, and that, so over, in the past 2 years, there's an increase of the request for the IEPs, right, to 50%. And what happened then was also we dropped extra math help in the uniform, right, because we had cut staff. Because I know, like, personally, I have a child that was getting help in small and how much middle school those services dropped because of the cut in staff. So I'm just wondering, did parents start to request more IEPs because they felt their students were not getting supported in the classroom due to the cuts? And how do we bring back that extra math and reading support for that would be like a tier 1?
Right,
That
so,
would need into the IEP request.
yeah, that very well could be a factor for sure, and we did bring back additional math intervention for this year at the middle school specifically, and keep it at Swallow as well, so that it's actually a split position between Swallow and the middle school, to bring some of that back. You know, and one of the roles of a math interventionist is also that instructional coaching. We're working with classroom teachers specifically to around those tier 1 and tier 2 interventions, so that we can kind of counteract that, you know, and we've had probably a steady growth in the number of referrals, but where the stat that really jumped was that finding of ineligibility, that jumped. So that doesn't necessarily mean that there were significantly more referrals, but there were more referrals that were then the student was then found to be ineligible, and that was the concerning part.
Any other questions? David?
So, when it comes to these referrals, specifically at Swallow Union, towards the end of last year, my son was missing a lot of his one-on-one time between testing, MCAS, and things like that. Will these efficiencies help put those services back to the kids that need it? Or are we understaffed at Swallow Union at this point?
I'm not sure the best way to answer that question. So you're talking about services that were interrupted because of testing?
Because of MCAS, IEP testing, meetings. So if you're saying there's a 50% ineligible rate, an efficiency in that should put the teacher back in the classroom, or?
Well, it's not necessarily the teacher who's doing the evaluation, you know, who's managing that. So and then the testing windows are going to be the same every year. So if they're, you know, unless, depending on the schedule, how your child is scheduled for specific services, that could be the same because the MCAS window will likely be the same that year. So it's not really impacted. It's not really a staffing impact. It's more of a testing schedule.
Yeah, if I'm understanding your question correctly, I think this particular recommendation wouldn't really have a positive or negative impact on that. Like, I think that's a separate issue, albeit an important one, but separate.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it would be separate from staffing efficiencies. That makes sense.
Okay. One.
All right, building usage. So this section of the audit first is looking at current data review, current building utilization, effectiveness, productivity, and cost efficiency, and then looking at building usage scenarios. So early childhood center, relocating the early childhood center to another building and merging students into Florence Roach and closing Swallow Union. Those were the two big scenarios that were kind of investigated in terms of potential savings operationally and financially. So Swallow Union, Groton Dunstable Regional Middle School, and Groton Dunstable Regional High School were or are rated as underutilized by MSBA standards. With respect to the Groton Dunstable Middle School, it's noted that the rating standard as underutilized was prior to 2018 when the central office was relocated into the Stoddard building. The Boutwell Early Childhood Center is rated as a 1, which is the highest rating. 1 is good, 4 is the worst. For both building condition and environment, one of the quotes around Boutwell: currently, the Boutwell building serves the ECC program well. While somewhat antiquated, it has been kept up to date. Air conditioning, new heating system. There's a room that can serve as a play space / gym. There's an area that serves as a library now, which is new. Outdoor play area is aging and should be replaced. Swallow Union Elementary School, well-maintained older elementary school in need of renovation. 2016 MSBA needs study rated building is a level 3 for building condition and then a 1 for general environment. The enrollment last year was 211 students. capital improvements underway at Swallow Union, as well as an application to Massachusetts School Building Authority to repair/replace the roof. That is in process. Florence Roach Elementary School, new building completed and open to students for the 2024-2025 school year. Designed for maximum 645 students. The enrollment in 2025 was 615. Middle school, two buildings at Stoddard, 5th and 6th grade, also with central office in the back. Middle school north, 7th and 8th grade, 2025 enrollment was 739. MSBA study in 2016, rated both buildings as 1 for condition and general environment. And again, as I mentioned, district office housed in the Stoddard building. That was actually one of the things that came out of the last independent operational audit, which was done in 2017. The high school, 2025 enrollment, 659 students, rated 1 for building condition and general environment. Project underway to connect the high school to town water. So the scenario of moving the early childhood center to Swallow, while there is room and available classroom space, the cost associated with the move would be very high. According to the auditors, Swallow Union building is also in need of major renovations. The current ECC location is preferable for the district as a whole. There would be minimal, if any, savings with respect to personnel for moving the ECC either into Swallow or the other scenario into the high school. So moving ECC to the high school, similar recommendation. While there would be adequate room and classroom space at the lower level, the cost of moving would exceed any benefit to having the ECC at the high school. The savings would be minor and the cost would be high to retrofit all the classrooms. We'll have to add a playground. It would also displace the Groton TV studio, which is in the basement of the high school. Closing Swallow Union and moving all K-4 students to Groton. There is a paragraph about, I mean, again, this is an operational audit, but the educational costs and the impact would be felt across the district K-12. It would require the new Florence Roach building, which is specifically designed for K-4 classroom neighborhoods, to be K-3 only. Which would then displace the 4th grade. All the 4th graders would then need to move to one of the middle school buildings. Middle school buildings would then need to become 4th grade through 7th grade, likely displacing the 8th grade, which the 8th grade as a whole could fit in the high school, or by maximizing available space, you could potentially fit 4th through 8th and across the two buildings, but it would displace central office to the high school. Anyway, either scenario, the shift in the grade level and use of space is highly disruptive and not educationally or developmentally appropriate for our students or for our staff. Dunstable obviously would lose its elementary school, which is a central part of the town community and a critical part of our school district. It's one of the highest performing elementary schools in the state and is a model school community. Okay, closing Swallow Union, moving all K-4 students to Groton. The town would also incur, and they talk about this in the audit report a little bit, would incur significant costs associated with sending all resident Dunstable students to Groton. The district would incur greater transportation costs associated with closing the Swallow Union. Capital improvements and renovation in the Swallow Union are underway, as well as for the Union building. MSBA is reviewing an application to replace the roof. Potential for Dunstable residents to block the decision to close Swallow Union and fail budget growth / possible legal action could follow. They mentioned this in the audit report and citing we do not know a solution to this problem.
So my understanding based on that report is that no solution is a good one. That's gonna make everybody happy, so I mean, clearly, right? So if we wanna keep Swallow Union, we're going to have to pay for it. I think as a town, we've known that for quite a while now. What I'm shocked about by this part is how full Florence Roach is. And if we were to make all these changes to the school district based on whatever it was, we're gonna Groton's very easily gonna outgrow Florence Roach, especially with their 2 public housing units that are expected to be built over the next few years. they're gonna have to come back to Swallow Union and house kids there. That's just based on my observation. So I would think that for us to do anything like that moving forward, we would have to do yet another review of those viable options, where this is giving us an idea of what we're looking at. To really fully understand the cost to do something like this, we would have to have, like, kind of looking at a 5-year plan of whether or not, what it would look like for the schools if they're, because I know there's significantly a lot of movement in most of the schools with the exception of Florence Roach. We would have to really look at it from a different perspective as if we were to grow. Because it's only looking at the current state, it's actually not looking at what happens 5 years from now.
Correct.
When Groton grows, and Dunstable could grow, and we have space in Swallow Union. They don't have space in Florence Roach. I mean, it's not gonna be too fast before it fills up, that's from my observation.
No, I mean, I think it's not just your observation, I think that's a fact. I think that there are numerous issues with that scenario, that being one of them. The fact that like we would jump through all of these hoops, incur a lot of expense, at great, educational expense as well. Like as Jeff said, it's not developmentally appropriate, it's not educationally appropriate. So we'd be doing all of that, and then right off the bat, Florence Roach would be maxed out on its capacity, leaving no room for any future growth, which, as you pointed out, is expected to occur in both communities to a certain extent. But if you just took today's enrollment and you made this change, you'd already be like 5 students plus 5, and so, yeah, to your point, it absolutely would be maxing out capacity.
I think we're to close school, I was assuming we'd have to get approval from MSBA to do that. And I would imagine they'd look at similar things to say that doesn't make educational sense.
Well, so here's the thing that I want to make clear. I don't think anybody on the school side is looking to do this, and so I think the purpose for the audit was just to kind of make these recommendations, which we're free to look into further or disregard. From my own perspective, this is one that I don't personally think is worth pursuing further. We met with Groton last night, and there was not a single person on either board, FinCom or Select Board, that expressed any desire to pursue this further. There's a lot of people here, if we hear that like there's interest in that, I mean, we could certainly talk about that further, but I am not hearing anybody say, let's really talk about closing Swallow Union. So just to make that, clear, like that's not something that anybody up to this point has been advocating for. But in the interest of transparency, like we're providing the audit to everybody in both communities so that, if there are people that were interested in understanding what that would look like, they can really have a clear picture of the pros and cons to it.
And if I'm understanding, just coming out of that report, the Swallow Union is grade 3, 4 is the worst, right? And then, but we're utilizing it to grade 1, so it's basically the building is falling apart, but we're utilizing it to dismantle. Yes.
But it's very efficient.
It's very
efficient. Very.
That's definitely positive that we're using it, but obviously for sort of anyone here from Dunstable, that we're not very far away from someone saying this is a grade 4 and we need to start talking about the replacement of that building, correct? I would imagine.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of what comes like next, right? I think from my perspective, I have no desire to pursue this option further, but there is that caveat that says, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in this building, and I think it would be in Dunstable's best interest to really approach that in a well thought out way so that we can kind of make decisions as a community about, is this something that we want to, talk about doing in a multi-step, over a number of years, or is this something we want to contemplate doing something more drastic? But I think, that is the next piece of it is, we have our school, we love our school, we also need to make sure we're adequately maintaining our school.
So from a parent perspective, I was actually hoping it was gonna be, let's move 5 and 6 back to the elementary school where it should be. And which we could do in Dunstable, but they can't do it in Florence Ridge. So, that part is disappointing to me, because I would have liked to have seen I know when my daughter went off to 5th grade, I was in middle school, I was like, oh my God, that's awful. I don't want to go into middle school.
A big transition.
Yeah, it's a big, it was more of a transition for me as a parent than it was for her. But just, I would have liked to have seen that as an option, but clearly it's not, because it's not like you can do it just for Dunstable and then, fill the kids at middle school at the other level. But, there's so many different scenarios that you could go with something like this that I would, certainly I would like to see a cost analysis on that, in addition to what they've already done. 'Cause what they did was a great job. I mean, I do feel like it was a nice audit they put together. But there is a lot of information in there about what to do with Bellwell, whether or not you could utilize that at another location. Is that a part of a serious conversation, or is that also off the table completely? Or do you not want to say yet?
I mean, I think it's premature to say that. The audit really affirmed that there's not any significant cost savings to moving it and then thereby closing that well. You could sell that building, have some capital or some money that's a one-time thing, but you haven't, you've now turned and created costs to set it up somewhere else, whether it was Swallow or whether it was the high school, whether there's room, but
there's a current, to my understanding, there is a waiting list to get in there because they're full, right? So that would be the benefit to moving it to a new location, would be that it would allow it to grow.
right. I mean, and then the capacity though at either of those places didn't drastically exceed where it currently is now.
How long is the wait list? Is it? I'm just curious, would it make sense then to?
Maybe opening
If there's
a second at Swallow.
If there's the demand that you have on as well.
Yeah.
As well.
I think that's the direction to pursue.
But as a community, we probably are due for another study to come to be like, if we have to redo that elementary school, it probably has to go bigger, because there's a world that Groton exceeds capacity and there's a transition back here, and we have to have capacity while our own town is growing with some projects and such. And the school that's got a 1 for efficiency, but a 3 to a 4 for quality of building. Sure.
What I heard was that
That's a big talk.
some people don't want to do it because they don't want to have to drive to Dunstable. Like, people in Dunstable have been driving to Groton for years, so
Well, and one thing to pursue would be, in either town or both towns, to do a long range enrollment study.
Yeah, because there's some significant housing projects coming for all communities, and with that comes some children along the way.
Though I did see in here somewhere that it said that there's declining enrollment, so is that true?
well, it has been declining, but the expectation would be that with housing development, it's going to go back up.
Well, no, I agree.
The last 5, maybe 6 years has been pretty flat. It's been a little up, a little down, a little up, a little down. There was a pretty big drop off district-wide in like 2016, 2017.
That's a COVID deduction, right?
Well, that was pre-COVID.
Okay.
Kind of since COVID, it's really leveled off. The last 5 years have been pretty level as far as student enrollment.
And then the only other thing that they mentioned in the report was that Swallow Union's roof and their playground needs to be replaced. But the playground was just replaced about, I don't know, it's not even 10 years old yet, I don't think.
Yeah, I think, so when I looked at that, I think that might have been a
I
typo.
gave you a heads up on that.
Yeah, because I don't think there was, if you read through it, like it definitely says that about Boutwell. There's no, anywhere else in the document, they don't explain why that is, so I actually think that might have just been a typo. Because, yeah, I don't think that there's really, there's nothing structurally wrong with Swallow. Now, that being said, I think that there are, some improvements that could be made,
Yeah,
outside of.
they need some shade structures there and stuff like that,
But yeah, there's no need to like replace that, but the roof for sure, and as Jeff said, we do have an application into the MSBA currently, so hopefully that.
For repair. I think it's instead of a replacement, there's
For repair.
There's 2 out of 5 sections that I think they're considering. So when it comes time, we'll know at the end of October whether or not our project was picked to go forward. And then you'll see a lot more.
and then if not, we're gonna put a tarp on it. Is that the next step?
You got a big target.
But that is, I mean, I will say that's the first of likely many requests that will be before the town, because that building is tired. It really does need investment, so the roof's the first thing. If there are gonna be a lot of other requests, then the town really needs to be prepared and willing to pay for it, because it's not gonna be, I mean, the report cited 60 to 100 million dollars. I don't know where exactly those numbers came from, but I can say it's not gonna be cheap. It may not be that much, but it will be, it's gonna be a significant investment for the town.
Yeah, so I mean, to Kieran's point, I think that it, in my mind anyway, that makes a lot of sense to do a study, because then you kind of have a really clear picture of like what needs to be done and what are the potential options. So that we can kind of decide, what's the best way, how do people want to see us go about this? Is it like a little bit at a time, or is it like we kind of do a large amount of work?
Go.
Yeah, so I think, Carol, did you have your hand up before? I'm sorry. If I didn't.
Any other questions?
Thanks.
When as a community do we start looking at fixing the school? I know we're looking at the roof, but coming up with a plan, really sitting down and figuring out before it's a problem.
I think we're gonna know if the 2 out of the 5 sections are gonna get some funding. That's really gonna lead us to, as a town, have to make some investment decisions. I may be speaking out of turn, these guys know much better, but that's my suspicion.
That seems like a Band-Aid though.
It sure is.
2 out of 5 sections. I mean, we, as a community, saying we may get some money for 2 out of 5 sections, but we should look at doing all 5 at once, as opposed to having another project come up. Plus, costs are only gonna go up as the years go. So if we wait 3 more years, that is gonna be 3 more years worth of expense.
Correct.
And whatever damage that causes down in the school. Mold,
Oh, yeah.
any sort of damage like that.
Be putting money after that, so it wouldn't be usable.
Procedurally, I have a question which would probably be for you. How would we go about initiating that process? Is that something that the select board would do, or would that come from the school committee? Like, what's the steps that we would need to go through to initiate that study?
To me, I mean, I think with the operational audit that was just completed, and I know you're close to having a capital plan
Yeah.
pulled together. I mean, to me, that's the kickoff to us really getting our act together around Swallow Union and what the plan's gonna be. And so, yeah, I think the first step is like a planning exercise, of like a feasibility analysis of what approaches, what approaches could we take and which one makes the most sense, and just identifying those. And so usually that does start with a building committee formation. I think it's a select board function, but I would want to confirm that. But one way or the other, if it's a school committee, it's a select board, I think that should happen quickly, honestly.
Because it'll be a town building, not a district.
I think it, yeah, I think that starts with the select board, I'm pretty sure, and it's pretty, I think the law is prescriptive on who serves on a building committee, but I just want to confirm that. But yeah, I think, Dave, I think you're right, I think it should happen quickly.
And backing into, I want to know, yeah, and, you know, fundamentally, I'd want to understand the population, the anticipated growth. Because I think there are probably studies and consultants that are way smarter than me that could probably say with 100 more housing units in town, you're gonna look at 1.5 children per whatever, like there's some arithmetic to that. That I think we as a district probably have to understand with the project in Groton, you know, the rental project by the post office for us and sort of what that means and what we should be aiming to be towards at the end of the day.
So I have a question. You mentioned a project in Groton. Why would Dunstable consider a Groton project?
Because they'll exceed capacity of 645 students. They're at 615 right now. They may need to bring the excess capacity back over.
But they just built a school.
Yeah,
They did.
we are a regional school
So-
district, so we need to look at the
Regional impact.
impact of us building doing our own thing here and what we need to do, what's gonna be good for the regional district.
Was that considered when they built their school?
It was considered in the sense that the state told us that we couldn't change the current setup. We could not be a part of the
But
process, the state said that.
these two new developments came up after the building committee had already, and we had already started the process. I served on the building committee for Florence Roach, so we did look at that,
They did a longer term enrollment study.
but those two projects were kind of like, way out, potentially not gonna happen, and then they've come to fruition, so now that they're real, we have to evaluate them as a district and what best serves that. And if they do get to capacity 100% right, we're gonna have students transfer from Groton to be over here at Dunstable, and then we have to evaluate what that number may look like, especially with our own developments that are continuing to grow here, what our enrollment would have to bump up to.
Makes sense to me.
Someone really smart can handle it and then Rich report. Some consultant.
Jake, you're gonna serve on another building committee?
The first 7 years was just so much
Pleasure.
Speak up, you sign up.
Our witness.
I was told, don't worry, in a couple months, you'll be all done, 7 years later. No.
Jake, just
I
in
know
time
it's
for the
all
next,
too well.
just in time for a new committee.
I didn't do it either.
Anybody else? Any other questions? No?
Thank you for sharing with us. It is interesting to hear about the operational review.
That audit did actually say that when we were initially going through Florence Roach, that it did reference that within 5 to 10 years of the opening of Florence Roach, that Swallow Union would have to be replaced, both for operational side of things, the building itself would be at a position of replacement, but then looking towards growing that facility as well. Like we have capacity now, but in 5 years, I don't see that as a realistic, at least from those audits that we looked at. Was some time ago, but still at the same time, we now have 2 developments proceeding forward in our own community, with 2 developments going on in Groton, and it looks like we might need some additional space.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, the hand in the back.
One more question?
It's probably, no, I'm sorry for asking this, but I assume the Dunstable budget forecasted budget deficit does not include anything to do with repairs as well. So I just wanted to know.
That's correct.
Correct.
Because that would be on the capital side, right?
Correct.
So
That's fine.
there are programmatic things that go on, and sort of, but if MSBA sort of says no to the roof, then the school district back and say the roof needs to be replaced. And then that would be part of their capital plan to look into it, and then that would be a cost, because it's our building. There is a portion of that defers back to Dunstable for the replacement of that roof, which would be capital costs that we would have to look at, which is part of the reason, not to dig too far into what we, on the advisory board side of things, why we have been trying to plan for capital investments that are gonna be necessary. Both, we have the school, we have the firehouse, we have a whole bunch of different things that are coming up. And we've been attempting to put some money, hoping that would help out as we've sort of gotten to a point of better budgeting. We've got some things that are lined up so that we're capable of withstanding some of this, but it's obviously not at the point of 60 to $100 million. I think we got $100,000 in there. So, maybe there's a roof. We definitely don't have something towards full replacement of things, but certainly studies, those types of things we would definitely be looking into. But that's part of our planning side of things, to make sure that we try to limit the amount of, requests for, overrides. We don't like to go down that route. Unfortunately, we've had to for some time, and a lot of different things. We talked about some of the problems that we've had with some of needing to reject some of the IUPs. Some of that is based around the fact that overrides have failed, right? We did pass our most recent one, but that was really to keep us at this float where we're at right now. Overrides to maintain what we had a few years ago obviously failed. And if we want to have those level of services, unfortunately, it has to come down to the ballot box. And we can't just tell everyone in town that if they pay more taxes, they have to agree to that. So.
Like the good old days. Before Prop 2.5.
Before 2.5.
Need a man by a salary and lower taxes.
All right, any more questions from folks out there? If there's not, then I guess we can wrap this up, and
Okay,
you're
well,
welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, and
Or cut and run.
thank you, everybody.
Everybody have our own.
You have
I
your
will
own meeting
adjourn
anyway.
the school committee meeting.
All right. Thank you all for coming in.
Thank you.
Their agenda.
All right, well, we can just jump on, we've got 2 sets of minutes to approve. Yeah.
I know, so I thought that way, like, it was just a few days ago, and I know, I'm like, let's.
I'll see you later.
Okay, we have 2 sets of minutes, one from 9/9/25 and 9/12/25.
Well, and then it's like,
Yeah.
move to approve the meeting minutes from September 9th, 2025, and September 12th, 2025.
Hey, if you
Second.
see Al out there, Al's on.
All in favor?
Aye.
He's got his one, he's just one of our more complicated and shouldn't start.
He went downstairs, Joni.
He's got a meeting downstairs.
Who does?
Eric,
What?
Advisor.
advisor.
Oh, okay.
They still
I
have-
was afraid he was gonna leave.
No, they still have agenda.
We'll get you home.
All right,
All
that's.
right, we good here?
Yep, minutes approved.
Minutes are approved. Next up, we have appointments, one for the Commission on Accessibility, one for the LRTA Representative, and Emergency Management Director. It looks like you have more on your list there.
There's-
Okay. Oh, no, okay, there's just
That's the full.
the whole,
that's- yeah.
okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna walk into this, all right? I'm gonna go backwards here first. I move to appoint the following residents to the Dunstable Commission on Accessibility. Jane Barnes, 1 year, expires June 30th, 26. Shauna Gibbons, 1 year, June 30th, 2026. Jeff Rosen, 2 years, June 30th, 2027. Anika Seliger, 2 year, June 30th, 2027. Escalade, 3 year, June 30th. Henry Fontaine, excuse me, 2028. Henry Fontaine, 3 years, June 2028. June 30th, 2028. All right, that's the Dunstable Commission on Accessibility. We also have 2 others. David Tully Senior, to the Lowell Regional Transit Authority with the term expiring on June 30th, 2026. And the last one is John Crandall as the Emergency Management Director with the term expiring on June 30th, 2026.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Thank you for your service.
Question. Is the LR,
Lowell?
is that the
LRTA?
transit thing? Is that something new or is that been?
Been around for a long time.
Long time?
Long
No,
time.
I mean, for us, is it?
No, for us too. Yeah,
And I think David's been doing it for
for a long time.
A long time.
Okay,
All right, I don't want to see any buses stopping out here.
that's not the plan.
Okay.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Okay, Oktoberfest, one-day liquor license and public drinking bylaw.
We're drinking outside. I move to authorize the consumption of alcohol at Larder Field on October 11th, 2025, between the hours of 1 p.m. and 5 p.m. for the Recreation Commission's Oktoberfest event. And further move to approve the request from David Capriati, the Beer Guy LLC, for a one-day liquor license for the sale of wine and/or malt beverages for the Oktoberfest event on October 11th, 2025, from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. at Larder Field, subject to the following conditions. 1, delivery of and receipt by the licensing authority of the required fee. 2, delivery of and receipt by the licensing authority of proof that alcohol will be purchased from an authorized source. Next is delivery of and receipt by the licensing authority of proof of insurance. And last, proof that the applicant can receive, properly deliver, provide storage, and disposal of all alcoholic beverages purchased in accordance with the with requirements of Mass General Laws, Chapter 138.
Second.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have one concern. With the first part of this motion, it's authorizing the consumption of alcohol, but that is not restricted to only that which is being purchased by the beer guy.
Yeah, do you wanna add that?
Yeah.
No, it would be though.
This doesn't say, we were
There's only
authorizing,
one license. The license is going to the beer guy.
I understand that.
That's it. Whatever he
I
has,
understand that.
that's what they consume.
But if we're authorizing the consumption at Larder Field, that means anyone could bring their own in.
Yeah, I think we've done that with that before, so so we're gonna amend this
Right.
to include language that the Oktoberfest event is not a BYOB event. And that it must be purchased at Larder Field for consumption at Larder Field
By license
from the license.
From the beer guy
from the beer guy.
Beer guy LLC, right, so I think that's kind of, we'll
Right.
probably rubber stamp that going forward with these.
Yeah. Second.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's a nice day.
I know, I'm gonna miss it. Okay. Fall special town meeting and warrant. What do we got?
We're just opening it, so we just
Okay.
need to call the meeting and open the warrant.
All right. let's do that.
I move to call a special town meeting on Monday, November 17th, 2025 at 7 p.m. at the Swallow Union Elementary School, and to open the warrant on Wednesday, October 1st, 2025, and to close the special town meeting warrant on Monday, October 27th, 2025 at 4 p.m.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, that's it. anything? I don't have anything other than what was on the agenda. Anybody else?
Nothing.
Nothing. All right, last motion of the evening.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.